All right, we keep talking about this idea of biased or unbiased data, biased samples. So I think it's time to really define what that word means. So bias in statistics is any systematic failure of a sampling method to represent its population. So in some way, we failed to obtain a representative population by the way that we're choosing our sample. The design of a statistical study is biased if it systematically favors certain outcomes or certain people or groups that are more likely to be chosen. All right, so the first one, type of bias that we're going to look at is one you're familiar with. This is sampling bias. We have two forms of that. That's the convenience sample and the voluntary response sample. And you have two examples in your notes. So I'd love for you to go ahead and pause the video and decide which one of these is which and kind of which way you think those results might get swayed, especially in that voluntary response one. All right, so the first one, sampling on campus. You see a student standing in front of the student center, now and then stopping other students to ask them questions. She says that she is collecting student opinions for a class assignment. Explain why this sampling method is almost certainly biased. Okay, so this one is going to be a convenience sample. This student went someplace like the university center that is really easy to see a lot of people, and she's just kind of asking whoever comes by that maybe looks like they're a little bit friendly and isn't going to be rude to her. So this is definitely not going to be random or representative. Something like a university center, you're going to be missing a lot of students. So the university center has a lot of freshmen and probably sophomores who are going there for their mail because they live on campus. They're going to go to the cafeteria because they have a meal plan. What you're going to really miss is probably a lot of your commuter students. If you have a large online student population, people that live off campus. And so you're going to definitely run into some issues there with who you're getting. Late night radio listeners and ghosts. Suppose listeners to a late night radio talk show were asked to call and report whether or not they had ever seen a ghost. What is this type of sample called? And do you think the proportion reporting that they had seen a ghost for their radio poll would be higher or lower than the proportion for a poll done using a random sample of adults? So this one is going to be a voluntary response because you put that question out there broadly to a lot of people. So that's, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, millions of people listening to this radio broadcast. And then people decide themselves whether they're going to respond in or not. So we get voluntary response. And I think that you're going to find most of the callers have seen a ghost, right? You would only call in if you're like, hey, I've seen a ghost and I've got a great story. You probably are not going to call in if you haven't seen a ghost or don't believe in ghosts, because the likelihood of them putting you even on the show is pretty low. So that would discourage you from calling in. So that'll be a voluntary response sample.